similar report and update for the board. So on Election Day, November 5th, 2024, a voter referenced in your materials entered the vote center at First Friends Quaker Church wearing a hat and t-shirt containing a photograph and campaign slogan of a candidate that was currently running for office. It is contrary to Indiana law to wear an article of clothing that includes a name, picture, photograph, or other likeness of any candidate within the polls. When asked by an election worker to remove his hat and turn his t-shirt inside out, the voter became confrontational and belligerent. The voter removed his t-shirt, revealing 2 handguns and a knife on his person. Many of the individuals in the vote center were visibly upset by the interaction, and some fled to a nearby kitchen. Election workers immediately escorted the voter to the first available voting machine, waited for him to vote, and ushered him to the building's exit. Election workers also contacted the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department to report the incident. IMPD arrived on the scene, spoke to the voter, but did not arrest him. According to one witness, IMPD presence prevented voters from entering the vote center parking lot during the investigation of the incident. Because First Friends also serves as a preschool, guns are not allowed on the premises. According to the pastor at First Friends, church leadership is reconsidering allowing the facility to be used as a voting center as a result of this incident, and have otherwise enhanced security around the premises of the facility. It was also reported that voters who were waiting in line, who had not been checked in to the e-poll book, left the vote center as the incident unfolded and did not return. Some voters did have children present with them in the vote center. The Marion County Election Board had a notice of today's hearing delivered to the voter in person on December 13th, 2024. The notice was on Marion County Election Board letterhead and contained a fair description of the nature of the charges and the date and location of the hearing. The service was provided, and we did get confirmation from the service that the service was provided to the voter who greeted them armed and told them to leave. Once it was explained why they were there, they accepted the service at that point. And I'm happy to answer additional questions as the board has, but that is essentially the update that I have as of the last meeting.
Thank you. I know in the last meeting, just for context for everybody, we had a video. Are we prepared to share that as part of the process?
Yes. So we can start that video. So my understanding at that time, Madam Chair, that the inspector did intervene after the voter was checked into the e-poll book. The inspector intervened to take that voter to a machine to expedite the process for him to leave. And the inspector is here for the board elected.
Great. Do you want to take the podium and provide these? So my name is Margot Kelly. I've been an inspector for Marion County for over 20 years. And so I worked as an inspector for the general election, November 5th, 2024, at the First Friends Creek meeting place where I worked for 4 to 5 years. A voter entered the voting center at about 11:45, wearing a MAGA hat and a T-shirt with Donald Trump's picture on it. And as is the rules that we've learned, he was asked to take his hat off and turn his shirt inside out, or go to his car and get a jacket and cover his shirt. He refused to do that. He was very belligerent, and one of our poll workers, Ed Choate, confronted him to take off his hat and remove his shirt, and he refused to do it. Very belligerent, using a curse word repeatedly. And in the meantime, I was sitting at the inspector desk working with some voters that had address change issues. And, but I saw that there was a problem because I could see the entire area. And so I got on the phone to the inspector hotline, and also at that time, Ed came over to me and said he has guns. So I talked to the inspector hotline, and they said, call the police, which I did. Immediately after that, we had a script that we were to use when we called the police that had all the information that we needed to give the police. After I finished that call, I got up, and at this point, the voter was now at the check-in to get his ballot, the one ballot that you get before you go to the express vote machine. And he was, as reported later to me by those two individuals that were checking in, he continued his belligerent behavior, cursing, etc. When he had his ballot in his hand, I at that point, that's when the film stops. And I escorted him. I waved to. We had co-workers strategically placed in the room to help people get to the free express vote terminals, because it was a very long process because of the judges, so we were trying to coordinate that. So I flagged them and said I wanted the one closest to the DS200. And so that person's just finishing up voting. I brought him over to that DS2, express vote terminal, and he sat down. I asked him at that point to put his T-shirt back on. At that point, I didn't care whether it was inside or outside. I just wanted to have the guns covered. So, and one other thing, that one of the guns was exposed before he took his T-shirt off. That is, we have some picture documentation of that. So he walked into the vote center with a gun exposed. So when he took off his T-shirt, we realized he had another gun, and then he also had a knife. So while he was sitting voting, I asked him to put his T-shirt on. He put his T-shirt on. I waited there, not overlooking who he was voting for, just to the side, until he finished it. And then I escorted him to the DS200 and stopped the line, and to let him just put his vote in, and then I escorted him to the door. Luckily, all these things were close together. So at that point, I went outside, and one of the other co-workers said that she was going to watch to see what car he got into and try to get a picture of his car, his license. At this point, there was no police there. So then I went back in to finish up a couple of things I was working on, and then I went back out to see what was going on, and I was told he did not leave the parking lot, that he was over in the sanctuary gardens, I think it's called sanctuary gardens, the woods that it's beside the church. And so then the police arrived, and I told them that he was in the woods. So they went in to talk to him, I went back inside, they came in to get me, and then we talked out there. They took a statement from me, and then one of the other voters that was there, not a poll worker, but a voter, actually was the first person to call the police. Multiple people called the police, but she saw him when he walked in the door and knew of him as a violent person, so called the police. So her statement was taken by the police, and so was mine. So that's pretty much the story. He was very belligerent. You can't appreciate from the video how hostile and belligerent he was.
Thank you, Ms. Keller, for being here, and thank you for your service. I can imagine how scary the situation would have been, and it sounds like you were able to manage it in a moment. Just as we provide more context, about how many voters do you think were in the vote center during the incident?
I would say there was between 50 and 60, because we had a line to use the express vote. We had all express vote stations were filled at that point, and we had a line to get the ballot. But it's it is kind of a guess on my part, because I was focused on him.
What do you think, if you create sort of an environment, you say it was pretty belligerent, did people leave, were people afraid, like could you give any more context for just sort of the tone in the room?
Oh, there was definitely some fear. Some of the voters that were standing to get there, to use an express vote, they were behind the check-in station, and some of those voters that were on that line went into the kitchen, which was a room right off of the main room that we were in. So some of the voters went into the kitchen, some of the voters left, some of the voters that hadn't gotten their ballot yet left. And I believe that some of the voters didn't even vote. Well, I know that because a neighbor of mine came to the vote center and left and went to another vote center because of the police got there.
I'm sorry, I got to hold on. Are there any questions before me today? Oh, I have a number.
Thank you for all of the work that you have done over the years. I hope this incident has not made you change your mind.
No, I've done this for many years because I wanted to do it, and it is something that I enjoy doing, and I will not stop doing it because of this incident. I've had incidents in the past, but nothing like this. This was definitely, just people would get a little excited about something, but nothing like this.
What did he, it's very hard for us to hear.
Yeah.
What did he say?
Well,
What was he saying? But I mean, you're describing some things that we can't hear.
Yes. He talked a lot about some audits that were going on, undercover audits that were going on inside the vote center. I think he considered himself one of the auditors. And he talked about what we were doing was, which was managing the vote center, was against the law, and that we were violating the law, and that he was going to report us, and that he claimed that some of the people that were there were FBI agents from some of the poll workers. So it was kind of a mishmash of, I'm looking through my notes because I have some of the comments written down that he did say. He was complaining about the electioneering going on outside, that they were dominated by Democrats and there was some Republicans there, which wasn't true. And of course, a lot of them left, by the way, when this started. But just a lot of claiming that there was fraud going on and that we were going to all be arrested and that that there were undercover agents watching us. So it was a lot of, pontification.
Were there any threats made?
Well, besides being arrested. Now, when he did take his cap off, he did put his cap on the poll worker's head, which to me was inappropriate. If it had,
Did Ed ask for that?
did he ask for it?
Did he ask him to put the hat on his head? Did he
No,
say-
no, he did not.
He just,
He just did it in defiance of the request to take his hat off.
when Ed approached him, you said that he confronted him, and when I think of confronted, I think of my sisters, which is probably, hopefully not similar. Do you know how he did that?
Yeah, confronted probably was the wrong word, because Ed was very professional and calm. He just simply went up and asked him, as you can see in the video, that he calmly, you can't hear, that's part of it.
That's why I'm
Yes,
asking.
he calmly asked him to take his, and
He
explained to him.
he wasn't
Okay.
demanding, you have to take that off right now.
No, that's not in his character.
No, I know.
Yeah.
So it did not seem like that, but
Yeah.
it's, I mean, if there's something that will help us make up our, decide what we're going to do here. Did any of the poll workers or voters talk to you about this after the incident was over and express anything to you?
Every single one of them did. So it was something that every poll worker that was there at the time expressed their concern. And they were very, very concerned about the belligerent behavior and the guns and the weapons on the premises.
I did hear in the video that somebody, when he went to the check-in table, I heard somebody say something about having a gun there. Did he respond to that?
Yes.
Was that a voter
That was
or?
a voter, that was a voter. That was.
And those were the people behind the table
Those were
were
the
waiting.
people waiting for the express vote, who's she. So that was a voter that said that. He immediately, you can see this in the video, picked up his phone call to police as well. The police got multiple calls that day. So, I don't believe it, I know they did. So that person was right behind the two people that were checking him in. And he said, and the voter that had the guns, had the weapons, said that he was allowed to carry weapons into the vote center.
Did he talk to any other poll workers or make any remarks to them that were significant? That you heard about, that we're just trying to find out what happened from somebody who was there.
Well, I mean, after the next day, I called Patrick and I told him, have you seen my report that's in the folder? This was an event that impacted the poll worker safety and voters on site. I also reached out to every single poll worker, and I have, their reactions and what they saw documented. Now, the key person obviously was Ed Choate, who actually was the one talking to the voter with the guns, and he has some of the actual comments that he said.
What are those?
Okay, I'm just going to read it so it's easier, otherwise I have to paraphrase. So when the voter entered, I saw that he had a MAGA hat and moved to request he remove it. He was immediately agitated, stating there was nothing on the identifying hat, any political affiliation, then I was not to talk to him again. At that point, I noticed the holstered gun at his right side and went to your table to ask you to call the police. I returned to him and went on a rant about how the Democrats were campaigning outside illegally and stopping the Republicans from campaigning. It was all a setup by the Democrats. This is the voters saying this too. He went on with other nearly incoherent statements about how his constitutional rights were being violated and that he knew so much more about the laws than any of us. He had his phone out and he said he wanted my name and he was going to take a photograph of me. I showed him my clerk ID and posed for his photo, which I don't think happened. He said he was calling the FBI and I said that was a great idea. He insisted he be allowed to vote. I calmly told him it was not going to happen until he removed his hat. About that time, my wife Karen came out. She mentioned that his shirt also had an impression of Trump on it, saying it had to be turned inside out. This further aggravated him, and I asked Karen to step aside. Again, he demanded to be allowed to vote. He pulled out his phone again, and I asked him if he had reached the FBI. He said he would wait until he finished voting to call them. I again told him it would not happen until he removed the hat and turned his shirt inside out. At that point, he pushed his hat onto my head and turned to the clerk to check in. He turned to the check-in table. I stopped him and reminded him to turn his shirt inside out. At that time, he yelled something like, "I'll show you fucking people," and started to pulling his shirt off. With that, everyone saw his sidearm and his backup gun was small on his back. I was holding his hat and asked if he wanted to hold his shirt also. He grabbed his hat from me. I then ushered him to check in to the check-in table, hoping we could process his vote quickly and get him out. I kept an eye on him until you took him to the express vote machine. At that point, I lost track.
Do you remember anything about the demeanor of the voters or anything that maybe that they said?
Well, the one voter that called the police when he entered the building, okay, her statement is on the police record as well. She told me, because I was standing when we were reading her statements, she said, "I know him, he's a violent person, and he was a dangerous, I'm paraphrasing a little bit situation." So I didn't talk to any of the other voters individually. I talked to all of the poll workers, and they were all concerned.
Did they talk about how they felt?
Well, most of them felt intimidated, that there was an attempt to intimidate them. I know that I can express for myself that I knew that was an attempt to intimidate me.
Having the guns or the yelling or the
walking in with the paraphernalia, which more than likely knew wasn't appropriate, and then becoming belligerent with the coworker that requested his hat and t-shirt.
Did he put the shirt on when you asked him to? When he was voting?
He was sitting at the express vote. He was like, when I asked him to put the shirt on.
There are so many other questions. Were there any new poll workers?
Yes, there was a poll worker who was just turned 18. I mean, he responded and he was, he happened to be sitting actually very close to the two people that checked him in. It's on the video. But, you know, he was new. And actually, I had a couple of new people that I hadn't worked with before. Some of the people I'd worked with because they came to the same place for a year. But there were a number of people that were new that I didn't know very well, that I didn't know well.
Did they say this was enough for them, they wouldn't come back?
Nobody came right out and said that. One person, you know, just wrote me and said they'd like to stay, but it wasn't because of this. But, well, I hope not. But anyway, I don't think, I didn't hear that nobody, you know, wasn't going to help out again, but I guess we won't know that until 2026.
What happened to the voters who were at the inspector table, with the address issue? Did they just have to wait?
They just waited for a couple, and I had just
Until
turned
you
up a
finished
couple of
with-
them, and then, you know, and then a couple more, it was kind of a steady stream of adverse situations. So it didn't impact. I think I had given people the BRT 412 form, and then, you know, so they had things to do well.
But they had to wait for you while you handled the,
They had to wait for me to come back. So I came back and forth a couple of times. Got him out the door, came back, went back out again, when the police came back, went back out, and the police called me out again to talk.
so 3 times.
Yeah. His wife was the voter's wife was actually voting, which I didn't know until I was given the statement, because the police told me that his wife was there.
Do they come together?
It looks like, from what I know, that they came in separate cars. Because when I went out to talk to the police the second time, they said that his wife had left. And I asked them, she left without him, because I knew he was still there. And they said, yes, she wasn't feeling well, so she left. And I said, well, you cannot leave until this person is no longer on the premises. So I didn't know if there was 2 cars at that point. Apparently there was.
Madam Secretary, asked a lot of questions that I've been thinking about too. As you recall that morning, the makeup of voters that were there, can you describe the individuals that you may remember being there? Obviously, those voting over 18 registered to vote, but did anybody have their children with them?
Yes, there were children. But there had been children earlier too.
I mean, that's not uncommon. I did that with my son. It's very hard for me to take my son to go vote and help him. I just wanted to torture mine and bring him. Maybe that's what we're at this table.
Okay. So there
I'm
was-
sorry, there were kids there. Were there, that's a school too.
Yeah.
Were there school kids there?
No, the school was closed that day.
Okay. But voters had brought their children in with them.
Right.
And there were some children present during this time frame.
I'm almost positive they were, because they were, there was quite a few most of the day. You know, my focus at that point was on the voter. So, but I'm almost positive there were kids who were sent to that.
Like both of my colleagues who said, thank you for your service for your many years in particular last November. Thank you. Do you think that the de-escalation training was helpful that we had this past?
Yeah, I mean, at the time when Patrick came out with the, all the materials, you know, on how to de-escalate, I thought, oh, this is a little overkill, but ironically enough, it was my voting center. But it was very, actually, I used it, as I said, I used the material when I got on the phone with the police, so I followed the script. so that they would have the address, they would have exactly what's going on, and so forth. It's hard for me to imagine what would have happened had they come while he was in the building. But, I don't know, it's a difficult situation, but anyway, yes, it did help. It did help.
And so I continue to watch that video and listen to you, thoroughly impressed, and how you were able to handle that. I don't think I would have been capable, especially after seeing the gun. So I think the de-escalation had a lot to do with how you were able to manage them. So
No, for sure, yeah, it was definitely very helpful. At the time I was having it, I didn't realize how helpful it would be. But it was. In fact, I had made copies of the script to use and given them to each of the check-in groups. We had 3 sets of 2 people each checking in, and so everybody had the script. And one of the voters, an elderly person who also called the police, handed the phone to the poll worker, and she was able to read out the address and so forth. So it did come and help. It was helpful.
That's good to hear. The one thing you hear over and over and over in the trainings, and in case you don't know, the trainings for inspectors are mandatory. And for other poll workers, highly encouraged, but not mandatory. So most people attend. And I think we sweeten that with a whole $10 bill for each of those, maybe a $20 bill, I'm not sure. But you heard over and over and over during that training and subsequent trainings, and probably years before I was even on the scene, about how much this board and this staff cares about poll workers. And we went, and Brad and I went to a hearing on a poll worker protection bill last year. That we mean it when we say it. That poll workers and voters and the sanctity of the ballots, that's a given. The safety of poll workers and voters is paramount to us. We regret that this incident happened, and I am sorry.
Well, I agree. I regret it happening too, because I think it scared people. And I think it impacted the voters as well as the poll workers. But I do think it's important that poll workers are protected. And in this particular case, who knows what could have happened had we refused to allow them to vote or something like that. You just don't know.
Well, he had his ID.
He had his idea.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Ms. Kelly. Appreciate you taking the statement from the town to do it. Now, as part of the hearing, I know is there opportunity for, I know we served Mr. Palumpi, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And so he was given notice to come today and share his side of the story if he wanted to. Do we know if he is present and wants to speak, or has a representative on his behalf present?
I believe I can speak to this. It's Daniel William, outside counsel of the board. On Friday, they received contact from the attorney who had been retained the day before to represent him. And they asked on Friday whether we could continue today's hearing. We said we'd take it up at the hearing. Over the weekend, we received an additional statement from the voter regarding the incident that we provided to his attorney on Monday yesterday. And on those grounds, he expressed concern that they hadn't had enough time to review and prepare for the hearings, and they were not going to attend. I received that communication this morning.
They're just not showing up?
I apparently not. I don't believe I've seen them here today. I've never met.
The notice was served, excuse me, I'm sorry for correcting. Who served the notice?
We had a process server serve the notice. And we received confirmation from the process server that it was served, and his attorney acknowledged receipt that his client had received the notice back in December.
In December 13th, for an incident that occurred Election Day, November 5th.
Yes, that is correct. It was served the evening of December 13th.
And when do they want to,
An extension for how long?
The request was made for 30 days. I pressed interest in understanding what the 30 days would be needed for, because we did have this scheduled far in advance and gave him notice well over 30 days earlier. And I was hoping he would be here to articulate the basis for that additional time.
what are the merits for more time?
I'd say in favor of allowing more time, is it would be somewhat fair to him, given that he just retained an attorney less than a week ago. And
Who's the lawyer?
the lawyer is a name, individual named Edward Kraus.
Council, if we allow for more time, like what information, based, other than what we have today and what we've learned, what information could he provide that would change the context or, I guess, the decision?
I would leave that all to y'all's discretion. I do think there is merit in hearing his side of the story. If he shows up and decides to give that side of the story, I do think that hearing from both sides has value.
Would, I guess, I would love the council if they're,
Is there anything else that we're supposed to be looking at or hearing about?
Today specifically, or?
Yeah, on this matter?
On this matter, is there anybody else, Director Becker, that we're to hear from today?
I would defer to council, but I think if the board wants us to continue looking or asking questions, we could do what the board wants. I believe we've collected statements from everybody that is wanting to provide statements, and we've turned all that evidence over to the representation for Mr. Hope.
so we have all information other than this.
You can always do more investigation. Here, I think we've heard a recounting from Director Becker, what took place on that day. We've heard from the individual who was running the polling site, and I think that under the statute that we're operating under here, we have to give him an opportunity to be heard. I would take the position that opportunity has been provided, and it could move forward if we wanted to. But I do think there is some merit in allowing for some additional time for him and his attorney to review. I should note that we did provide him a video on Friday, and all of the witness statements that we've gathered to date, within hours of receiving contact from him. And it was on the basis of an additional statement from the voter that we received on Sunday. I provided that to him. I had it provided to him yesterday. That he said he would not attend because he did not have enough time to review that additional voter statement.
Okay, so we extend 30 days, based on what they requested. What happens if they don't show again? Do they request another extension, or what will be the process at that point?
It remains, under the statute, we provided the notice and opportunity. If we provide him with additional notice and opportunity, you sit in the same position of having, done what I believe the director believes, and I believe it's been a fair, thorough investigation. Allowing additional extensions would be within, I believe, your discretion, but at some point the board does need to decide.
This has already been,
She's counting days.
well, I am, I'm looking at my calendar. That is over a month. I am listening to you. I do listen to the lawyers.
One thing to consider is if we want to make it fair opportunity to be heard, if we do want to, I could get in contact with him this afternoon and see if we can arrange a time that works for all parties involved, and we can provide a statutory notice. And we don't have to decide this now. when to have this, I guess, call it supplementary hearing, that the board does need to be in public within this meeting to decide how to proceed here. It can be now, it can be after, we give them another chance to be heard.
I think that's a fair point. I think give them opportunity to be heard and maybe to compromise then because it's within that 30 days and not a full 30 days of time to try to accommodate both.
Do you know how hard it is to coordinate our schedules?
We are important people.
We're sorry, Brent. He has to help figure that out. All right. Okay.
So I guess from a process.
You'll
perspective,
figure something
You'll
out.
reach out to his lawyer to decide on the time that you can try to coordinate before the 30 days.
I'm willing to be the go-between and work with him, to hopefully come up with an agreed upon date, recognizing that you all have travel plans and schedules and availability of room space and all. So we do want to give him an opportunity to be heard, but the board does need to decide on this matter.
Yeah, I think that we have waited to hear from him, and I do want actually to hear what he has to say. Because what my eyes see, my ears didn't hear that. I wasn't there, I didn't hear it. I heard a recollection and I've read some recollections. It makes sense. This is not, there are, as Patrick and I talked about earlier, there are certain locations in Marion County that we can compel to host voting every year. This location, and correct me if I'm wrong, is not one of them.
That's correct, it's not a public activity.
This is voluntary, it's, all right. So I guess we agree, I'm not going off on that tangent. We agree that you're gonna help try to find another, one other opportunity, so we can hear from this individual.
Yes.
I think she was intentional, but in the record, one other opportunity.
Indeed.
Understood.
Did we vote on this?
No, ma'am. I think under the circumstances, the chair just at her discretion can recess until a later date to be determined and noticed. And then we'll take it back up. And then, as Daniel said, even if this gentleman doesn't avail himself to it or what have you, the board still has to come back together, I think, and make some determination about whether he did or did not violate these Title III statutes.
The full worker protection?
Voter protection, electioneering.
So we recess, we don't adjourn the meeting, we
I would just
recess
recess
until
the
a
hearing.
further date.
I would recess the hearing to the date to be determined.
Recess the hearing until a date to be determined.
Sounds adequate.
Thank you, Council. Have you done that before?
Just